Thank you, Madam Chairman. Good morning. Thanks to all of you for the important work you do. Let me start by commenting in a follow-on way on the topic that Senator Chambliss mentioned, which was the detainee provisions in the NDAA. I want to thank all of you for weighing in, for sharing with the Armed Services Committee and the Senate at large your concerns about the detainee provisions as they were proposed. We had a spirited debate on the floor of the Senate for a number of days. Senator McCain was very involved, as were a number of other senators. I think it was a valuable debate. It was a worthwhile debate. I think it was the Senate at its best. I'm hopeful that the compromises that were put into the final product will work. I'm going to continue to monitor what's happening. I think the debate as to whether we ought to be prosecuting and delivering justice through the military system versus the Article III system is an important one. Senator Feinstein and I and others have joined to introduce the Due Process Guarantee Act, and I think at the heart of our concerns and the center of our mission is to ensure that Americans will not be indefinitely detained. So again, I just want to thank everybody for the engagement and the passion they brought to that important debate. General Clapper, if I could focus on a particular topic of commercial imagery. I was glad to see your comments at CSIS last week that you're a big believer in commercial imagery. You noted that it has the benefit of being unclassified, which is great for sharing among our warfighters at all levels and with our coalition partners overseas as well as with non-military users. In light of those comments, I've become concerned about what I've been hearing about the steep reductions in fiscal year 13 for the Enhanced View Commercial Imagery Program. I understand the White House has requested a requirements review for commercial imagery consistent with the new defense strategy, and that this review may well indicate the need for a shift away from the national technical means, given that commercial providers can collect imagery at resolutions that meet virtually all the military's needs. So here's my question. Do you believe that fiscal year 13 Enhanced View budget will meet the warfighters' needs for unclassified imagery? How will it affect the safety of our warfighters and our capacity to work with our allies?
Senator, as you alluded, I am a huge believer in commercial imagery, going back to when I served as then director of NEMA and later NGA in the immediate aftermath of 9/11. And we used a lot of commercial imagery then. It continues to be of great value for exactly the reasons you cited. It's unclassified. It can be shared in coalition contexts as well as in domestic disaster relief and the like. That said, though, we are looking at some pretty steep budget cuts across the board in the intelligence community, and as a consequence, commercial imagery will be considered in that broader look at where we may have to take reductions. And I'm not going to single out commercial imagery as the only one. It's my view that not only can we satisfy the military requirements, but all the other non-military requirements as well for commercial imagery at a contemplated level of funding. I think it's incumbent on the industry to perhaps come up with some innovations in business practices and this sort of thing that will help us as we look at a more constrained fiscal environment.
I appreciate your attention to this matter. I know many of the other participants today on the panel depend on this kind of imagery. My concern, I think, and you share it, I hear you implying, is that if you cut too far, you reduce the reach of the commercial sector. You may lose skill sets and experts that have played an important role, and you create a downward spiral that may be hard to reverse if it goes too far.
Sir, this is a concern we have across the board, not just in the commercial imagery industry, but as we make reductions, particularly in intelligence, obviously that's going to have some impact on the industrial base across the board.
Let me turn to the Middle East and perhaps direct this question at General Petraeus and Director Clapper and others on the panel. Please feel free to weigh in. Syria, do you assess that the fall of the al-Assad regime is inevitable at this point, or is it still in question? If the regime should fall, how do you assess what a post-Assad Syria looks like, both near-term and long-term? And then what are your thoughts on how Hezbollah and Iran would be affected should the Assad regime fall?
I personally believe it's a question of time before Assad falls, but that's the issue. It could be a long time, given the protracted, I think two factors here is just the protraction of this, of these demonstrations. The opposition continues to be fragmented, but I do not see how he can sustain his rule of Syria. And of course, post-Assad would be exactly the issue. There is, question about who would emerge in a post-Assad situation. As far as Iran and Hezbollah, what is transpiring in Syria is, of course, of great concern to them. It's why they are both expending great effort in terms of resources and advice and this sort of thing to try to prop up the Assad regime.
Yeah, I generally subscribe to that as well. The opposition is obviously showing a considerable amount of resilience and indeed is carrying out an increasing level of violence. The fact is that Damascus and Aleppo now, two previously relatively safe cities, the two biggest, are now seeing violence in their suburbs. The initiation of offensive operations by Bashar al-Assad's regime to try to push them out of the suburbs has met very stiff resistance. And I think it has shown, indeed, how substantial the opposition to the regime is and how it is, in fact, growing and how increasing areas are becoming beyond the reach of the regime's security forces. Post-Assad, one would assume that there would be leadership from the Sunni Arab community of the country, which is certainly the majority, as opposed to the Alawi minority that is the core of the regime, of the Bashar al-Assad regime. But that then begs the question of what happens to these other elements, to the minorities, to the Alawi, to the Druze, to the Kurdish minority,
Christian community as well,
the Druze Christians and other Christian sects as well. Clearly, the loss of Syria as a logistics platform, a line of communication into Lebanon to support Hezbollah would be a substantial setback for Iran in its efforts to use Hezbollah as a proxy. And that is indeed why the Revolutionary Guards Corps Quds Force is so engaged in trying to prop up Bashar al-Assad right now.
Let me turn to another country in that region. General Petraeus, you know better than anyone how much we've invested in Iraq. Treasure, our reputation, and of course the lives of Americans from all over our country. If you were to advise the policymakers sitting here and in the Senate and the Congress at large, what would you suggest we should be doing as Iraq struggles to find a democratic path forward?
Well, I think essentially continuing what we are in fact doing, which is to engage Iraqi counterparts at various levels, all the way from the top through the diplomatic communities, intelligence and security services, to work hard to help them resolve the ongoing political crisis, and there's no other word for that, although it has perhaps diminished it somewhat, and it now appears as of the last 48 hours that the Sunni bloc of the political leadership is going to return to the government, albeit with still some hedging of bets. Supporting them as they grapple with the security challenges that have emerged over the course of the past 2 months or so, where al-Qaeda in Iraq has been a bit more active than it was for quite some period, helping them to develop further their security forces and their intelligence services to combat a mutual enemy. We do not want to see the resurgence or the regeneration of al-Qaeda in Iraq, and very much in the interests of both countries and indeed the region and the world to work together to combat it.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.